Hello and welcome to the first installment of my Pokémon Generation 3 ROM hacking series. The focus of this tutorial is to demonstrate some of the most commonly used functions of Advanced Map, a fundamental map editing program created by Luho, a retired member of the ROM hacking community. This video will be broken down into the following segments. How do I navigate through Advanced Map? How do I edit existing maps? And what are events? Following these segments will be an application demonstration. In this final part, we will be erasing an already existing map and constructing a brand new map over the top of it using the skills we've acquired from this tutorial. When you first open Advanced Map, you'll get a window that looks like the one shown here. At this point, we can't really do anything other than open a Generation 3 Pokémon ROM. To do this, we can either click File, Load ROM, or click the leftmost cartridge icon. After loading a ROM, we can now begin editing. We will almost always start out by double-clicking the From header node. From here, a bunch of additional nodes are displayed. Each of these nodes contains a set of maps corresponding to a specific area within the game. For instance, if you're hacking Emerald, selecting node 0 will display all of the towns, cities, and routes. If you're hacking Fire Red, selecting node 4 will display all of the inside maps within Pallet Town. 4 new maps will be shown, including the map of the player's room, the map of the player's main floor, the map of the rival's only floor, and the map of the professor's laboratory. This is how every node in From header is organized. There will always be one node that contains all of the routes, towns, and cities, while the other nodes contain inside or extra maps corresponding to certain towns or routes. Now that we've gone over how to navigate Advanced Map, let's talk about how to edit existing maps. We'll be using Pallet Town for this example. Editing maps works the same across all Generation 3 games, so don't fret if you're not hacking Fire Red while following this example. If you look above the map you're editing, you'll see that there are 5 tabs, those being Map, Movement Permissions, Events, Wild Pokémon, and Header, respectively. When creating a new map, all of these tabs must be used at some point in order to fully complete the editing process. The Map tab displays exactly how the loaded map is structured. If you look to the right of the window, you'll see a slim column of graphics. Speaking basically, these are all of the graphics that are used in creating the loaded map. Of course, not all of the graphics are used, but some of them are. You can scroll down the list of graphics to see all of the available graphics that you can utilize to structure this map. The Map tab also allows you to actually edit the map. In order to do this, we first click on the graphics we'd like to use in the slim column, then click anywhere on the loaded map. This will overwrite whatever graphic was previously there with the new graphic. Notice how every graphic we can use is structured in a small square. These small squares of graphics are called tiles, and will be referred to as tiles from here on out. Every tile in the game is 16 pixels in width by 16 pixels in height. The entire game is made up of these, so you can see how creating a map may take more time than you had initially thought. In preparation for the next step, let's quickly whip up an additional tree for our map. Clicking on the Movement Permissions tab, we can see that every tile on the map is being covered with semi-transparent numbers and letters, with differing colors corresponding to whatever the numbers and letters are. For instance, the letter C is tied to a purple background, while the number 1 is tied to a red background. If we look to the right end of the window, it's clear that the slim column of tiles have been replaced with a single column of these other colored squares. Each one of these colors represents how the player can interact with any given tile. For instance, every tile on the map covered with a red 1 is a tile which the player cannot pass through, while every tile on the map covered with a purple C is a tile which the player can pass through. This is the only difference between the two colors. Red indicates an impassable tile, and purple indicates a passable tile. You may have noticed that there are bright pink squares with the number 4 on them covering the water tiles. A pink 4 indicates a surfable tile, meaning the player is allowed to surf on these tiles. These 3 colors are by far the most frequently used, and we can create some pretty nice maps just using them alone. In order to accommodate for the tree we added in our map earlier, let's make it impassable so the player cannot walk through it. Moving on to the Events tab, the original map is shown again, but some additional semi-transparent squares with letters on them are also apparent. Each of these squares represents a unique event. An event is anything that triggers something in-game to happen, in contrast to there just being a static screen with some flowers blowing in the wind. There are 5 types of events. The red square with an S on it indicates a signpost event. Signpost events have the ability to display lines of text when the player interacts with them. An instance of a signpost event is when the player interacts with a mailbox or a sign and a short bit of text is shown to the player. The purple square with the W on it indicates a warp event. These events are typically found on door tiles. Warp events are triggered when the player steps on them, warping the player to a new map. For instance, when the player steps on a door tile, he or she is warped to the house's interior map. If you click on a warp event and look at the right side of the window, you'll see a few things which relate to the particular warp event that you clicked on. The important values that we want to focus on are the warp's designated ID number, the target warp's ID number, the map bank of the target warp, and the map of the target warp. Just to clarify, the map bank is the number of the node in which the target warp is located, while the map is the specific map number of the node. So Pallet Town would have a map bank of 3 and a map of 0, since it's the very first map in the third node. Let's hit the Go To button and see what happens. We were warped from the outside of the player's house to the inside of the player's house. But why were we teleported to this specific warp event and not one of the other 3 on this map? That's because of the warp's identification number. This warp's ID number is 1, as shown in the white box. If we go back to the map of Pallet Town and click on the warp event we used to teleport us into the player's house, we see that the number inside of the white box next to To Warp Number is also a 1. This is how we know exactly where our warp events will take us. The next type of event is a dark green square with the letter S on it. This indicates a script event. These are triggered when the player steps on them. They are used to stop the player in his or her tracks and begin some sequence of actions within the game, like when Professor Oak stops you from leaving Pallet Town and brings you into his lab to get your first Pokémon. These can get extremely complex as they require an understanding of how to actually write scripts for the game, and I will not be going over them until a future tutorial. The next type of event is a light green square with the letter P on it. This indicates a person event. These are used as NPCs which you can physically see while playing the game. These events are similar to script events with regards to controlling what the NPCs say, so we will not be controlling them anytime soon. If you want to see what some particular person event looks like, we can click on the player icon to change all events to a more physical form. Be aware that this will make all other event types disappear, so if you want to edit other events, you must switch back into the original view. The final type of event is the flying position event. These events are located in places where the player can fly to, or any respawn points like in the player's bedroom in Emerald. You can move any type of event around the map by simply holding down the left click and dragging the mouse. We will not be using any events other than warps and flying positions in our upcoming maps, due to the others requiring us to understand how to write scripts and insert them into the game. The others will see plenty of usage in the future. The Wild Pokemon tab shows us which Pokemon we can obtain in the specified area. In Pallet Town's case, there is no tall grass, thus no wild Pokemon to catch in tall grass. If we switch the type of encounter from grass to water or fishing rod, we can see those encounters, but what if we want to end up adding tall grass to Pallet Town? In this case, hit the expand button. Check the boxes which are going to be used for wild Pokemon encounters, then hit OK. At this point, we can specify which Pokemon we want to have obtainable in this area along with their minimum and maximum levels. We can also change the encounter ratio using either the slider or the edit control. The range of values here is restricted from 0 through 255, 0 indicating no encounters will occur, and 255 indicating every movement or rod release will result in an encounter. It's also worth mentioning that as the encounter list goes on, the encounter rate for each successive Pokemon becomes less and less. Rare encounters are found at the bottom of the list, while common encounters are found at the top of the list. The Header tab displays some technical information about the map. Most notably to us, it displays the map's name, music, weather, and dimensions. We can manipulate any of these properties under this tab. The rest of the options shouldn't be tampered with at this point. We will get to what they mean in future tutorials. This concludes our discussion of each of the 5 tabs. Using the information we've learned throughout this tutorial, we should now be able to construct a brand new map, overwriting an already existing one. This will be excellent practice for the beginning mapper. You'll get experience mapping, outlining movement permissions, and some other fun things like giving your custom map its own unique name. While I build the map in the background here, I want to take the time to discuss a few things about creating a map in my video series in general. You'll notice that the graphics have changed dramatically from the original Fire Red tiles. This is because I'm currently constructing a map on my own Pokemon ROM hack, so yes, things may look a little nicer. Don't let this confuse you though, there is no difference between the original graphics and my own graphics with regards to showing off how mapping is done. As you can see, the first thing I like to do when making a map is completely strip the old tiles with grass tiles in order to start on a clean slate. I suggest you do this as well, as it gets rid of any confusion when you're trying to place tiles in places where other significant tiles have already been assigned. The second thing I like to do is figure out how I want the borders of my map to be laid out. This is an important design choice that I didn't bring up during the bulk of the tutorial, so I'll talk about it now. If you look above the slim column of graphics located to the right side of the window, you'll notice that there is a section that says border block with 4 spaces for tiles beneath it. The tiles that are placed into the border block section will be the tiles that are shown outside of the map's boundaries when viewed in-game. As you can see on the screen right now, those trees to the left of my player aren't actually in Pallet Town's map structure, but it looks like they exist when we're playing the game. The border block also repeats in the cardinal directions, so when you choose your respective border block, you'll want to make sure it looks nice when it's repeated over and over again, like the traditional tree layout does. If you need some ideas for good border blocks, load some of the game's already existing maps and see how they use border blocks. Looking at how the professionals did it in the first place is a great way to learn, in my opinion. Another thing I want to mention is don't be intimidated by spectacular maps that other people have designed. Beautiful mapping is something that takes a lot of time and diligence to attain, and nobody ever got there without first making some pretty atrocious maps. Remember that every expert was once a beginner. Failure is always the key to future success, since we tend to learn from our mistakes. That's about all I want to say about this tutorial's material, but I do want to get some miscellaneous stuff out there. This is my very first tutorial in the series and actually on the entirety of YouTube, so if you see any errors in the explanations or visuals, please let me know. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions, it would mean so much to me if you would let me hear them. My primary goal is to create a quality Pokemon ROM hacking tutorial series which anybody can follow and learn from, and the only way for me to know if I'm doing well with this goal is if I get feedback from my audience, which is you guys and gals. Whether your comments be positive or negative, I'll take them all into consideration. At least the coherent ones that don't include trolling or spam. Another bit of info I want to throw out there is that I will have a thread up in PokeCommunity.com's ROM hacking tutorials section very soon, which will feature all of these videos. If you're a member over there, please consider checking out that thread once it goes up, and feel free to post any comments or feedback there as well if you'd rather not use YouTube's comment section, which I completely understand. If you're not a member over there, please check it out. It's a great way for you to get help or advice from veteran ROM hackers, see some great print tutorials, and much more. The final thing I want to say is if you ever feel lost when trying to think of how to do something when it comes to hacking, I suggest trying to figure it out on your own before asking questions about it. A big chunk of what I know came straight from me tinkering around with things in various programs, and I'm really glad I decided to take the initiative to do that because I feel like I wouldn't have learned ROM hacking as well as I did if I just made other people do everything for me. If you're trying something completely new and complex, however, then yeah, it's probably a good idea to ask for help with that sort of stuff. We're about at the end of creating this map. Everything that went into making this map has been taught to you through this tutorial. Hopefully you all learned something valuable from this, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask either over at PokeCommunity or right here in my video's comments section. Thank you so much for being my audience, and I'll be back in the second installment of this series.